So I feel a bit more of a focus today on hip mobility, and because we sit a lot, we also stand a lot. So the hips are generally always involved in some sort of activity, and it's not always kind of the best activity. So kind of giving them a bit of a nurturing practice to create a bit of strength, but also to release some muscles that actually attach to the pelvis that help just with movement in general terms. So begin on your backs, please. You may just perhaps need a blanket or two, and actually take your blanket relatively close to your mat, so you don't need to move around a lot and reach to the opposite side. So kind of keep it close by, and bring the knees down. Bring your upper body down. Allow your upper body to settle. So knees point up. That in itself brings the pelvis into a neutral position, and actually keep your hands on your belly. And I invite you to make a fist and just actually bring the pinky finger out and towards one another. So I'm just kind of getting up again. So you literally see, so as if they're just kind of connecting to one another. So you hold the fist just perhaps over your pelvis with your pinkies connecting, not too deep of a pressure, but that you feel they're actually touching. So, and elbows relaxed, shoulders relaxed. So my hands rest just perhaps above the belly button. So there's not any strain in my arms or where it feels uncomfortable. And allow the breath to come naturally in through your nose and out through your nose. So and just observe how the breath flows, which areas the breath is actually flowing into. So without putting too much pressure on those little pinkies, just have a few more breaths as the fingertips literally press against one another. You take 2 more breaths in through your lungs. Perhaps feel the breath moving all the way down into the lower abdominals. And then release the pinky. So then actually, without making a fist, just bring the ring finger into the exact same position. So the ring fingers, just press the tips of your ring fingers, press lightly against one another. So arms still relaxed on the floor, perhaps your hands rest. So without all the other fingers touching. So just the ring finger presses, the tips of your ring fingers press against one another. And once more, focus in on the breath coming in through your nose and out through your nose. And once more, observe the area your breath is actually flowing into. So maybe you notice that the breath moves slightly higher up. So we brought the breath in literally more around or into the area around the navel center. So the fingers where the pinky finger literally brought the breath further down into the lower abdominal. And the ring finger brings the breath more into the navel area, belly button area. So stay with your breath for another 2 rounds. So the fingertips of your ring finger press against one another as the remaining fingers rest or just hover, float somewhere. Good, and then release the ring finger as well. Bring your middle fingers out. So the same movement here, the rest of your fingers can curl together, most likely into a fist, perhaps, if that feels okay, or just rest on your belly. And once more, press those middle fingers against one another. The tops of your middle fingers. As you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose. So we bring the breath now a little bit higher up, some more to the midrib area, almost the lower and mid parts of our lungs. So our fingertips, they have a lot of nerve endings, and certain energy channels are linked to those fingertips. So just isolating those slight pressure points brings the breath into different areas in our lungs, in our torso as well. So we're literally bringing the breath higher up into the chest. Take one more breath here with your index fingers, with your middle fingers touching. And then release the middle fingers. So perhaps make a fist again, bring the index fingers out and let the tops of your index fingers press against one another. So stick with those deep, full, slow breaths as you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose. So the breath is now traveling a little bit higher up into the top parts of our lungs. So stay for 2 more breathing cycles with your index fingers pressing lightly against each other. And then lastly, release the index finger, bring the thumbs together. So pressing the tops of your thumbs or whatever you can reach together. So the rest of your fingers rest or are curled up in a fist. And feel the breath moving in through your nose and being released out through your nose. So we bring the breath up into almost the top bits of our collarbone. So literally taking the breath through all the different parts of our lungs, increasing lung capacity as we breathe. So stay for another 2 cycles here. And then release the thumb. Now bringing all of those together. So literally bring your little finger, your pinky finger, your ring finger, your middle finger, your index finger, and your thumb together. So it looks like you're holding, or you're almost having your fists a little bit wider as if you hold onto a precious ball. Let your wrist settle on your belly. So again, those slight pressure points using now all the fingers at once. So we have that combined breath. So take a few breaths in and out through your nose. So notice, how does perhaps the breath feel differently compared to maybe not using those mudras, those finger positions, those hand gestures. So you can use those pressure points to direct the breath into different parts of your lungs. So if you want to direct the breath more into the deeper part or the lower part of your lungs, into the lower part of your abdominals, your pelvis, your abdomen, perhaps you can just isolate the breath again and focus more on the pinky and the ring finger. So take one more deep breath in and a full, complete breath out. And then release your hands alongside the body. Just staying for 3 breaths here. So perhaps try to replicate the same sensation without using your fingertips. So visualizing breathing all the way down, and then the breath moves like a wave up towards the collarbones as you inhale. And as you exhale, you release the air from the top down to the bottom. Good. Stay for one more breath. Good. If you had your eyes closed, maybe open your eyes, stretch your arms up and over, stretch your legs away from you. Oh, stretch out, maybe have a bit of a wiggle. Lovely. And then once you wiggle it all out, bring your feet back in. So you bend both knees so the feet are coming back to where you started, and hug your right knee in towards your chest. So theme here today is more working with the hips. Bring some movement into your hips, hip joints. So we begin to circle the right hip. Perhaps keep your left hand resting on the left hip joint, so that allows the pelvis to remain centered. So it doesn't tip or it doesn't wobble as much as when you have the hands just resting anywhere, maybe on the belly or on the floor. So medium, small, bigger circles as you rotate here your hip joint, bringing movement into that area, also increasing blood circulation. So it's not just good for the muscles, but also for the circulation. So one more circle here. And then bring your knee back, extend that right foot up, give it a bit of a, or right leg up, give it a bit of a wobble, wobble. So without aiming to stretch the leg in any way. So kind of just let it wobble. And then even if it is deep, slightly more bent, begin to flex and point your right foot, circling through the right ankle. So just noticing, how does the right foot feel today? So even here, just having the leg extended begins to release whatever feels a bit stiff, restricted. Good. And then bring that circling of your right foot back to center. Hug your right knee back in towards your chest on the exhale. Have a bit of a squeeze. Perhaps bring your nose towards that knee. So you curl together more on the right side. Then bring your upper body down and extend your right foot back up. Perhaps flex, point, have a bit of a sequence, a bit of a flow as you bend your knee. Maybe you just let it hover over your belly, or you lift up as you bring your nose towards your knee. So do this for a couple of rounds, that extension where the leg reaches up, a bit of a stretch, bringing the knee in on the exhale, and perhaps bring the nose up towards the knee as well. So just having a bit of a stretch through the back of your leg as well as through the back body. Lovely. Last one here. And then bring your foot back down. So keep both knees pointing up towards the sky. Let your right leg just flop out towards the right side and bring it back in. So you may feel a sensation on the inner thigh. So let it flop out and bring it back in. So a bit of an opening through the hip. So it may just reach a certain way, which is absolutely fine. So just that sensation of stretching also through the inner thigh. So almost like half of windscreen wiper legs. So let the right knee drop out and bring it back in. So last one here. And then coming back to center. So second side, hug your left knee in. And then move into some hip circles on the left side. So they could be small. Once you get a feel for your hip, for that left hip on this Wednesday morning, perhaps make those circles slightly bigger. So explore maybe taking your knee a little bit further out towards the side. So even here, increasing that range of motion in a more subtle, gradual way. Good. One more circle here. Bring your knee back in and then extend your leg up. Let it wobble, let it shake. So maybe your calves really wobble, maybe your thighs. And then begin to bring that circular motion into your left ankle. So knee can be as much bent as it needs to be. Good. And with your next exhale, hug your knee in towards the chest. Maybe bring your nose towards your knee as well. So you can find that bit of a sequence on the second side. So you extend, maybe flex the foot on the inhale. As you exhale, bring your knee in and maybe lift your nose towards that knee. So a few rounds here, bringing that release into the back of your leg. Good. Stay for another 2 rounds with that sequence. So you can just hug it in without lifting your head and the upper back. Good. And then place your foot back down. So let it settle. And then also let your knee, the left knee, flop out towards the left and bring it back in. So you may feel, even with gravity, there may be a bit more of a pull on the inner thigh, the groin. So bring a bit more mobility into those muscles that attach directly to the pelvis. So perhaps 2 more knee drops. And then bring the foot back to center. Take the feet as wide as the edges of your outer edges of your mat, and windscreen by both knees. So there's perhaps now more of a stretch happening also for the lower back. Side body maybe floating all the way down towards your knees, towards your thighs. So if your head feels okay, let your head go in the opposite direction. So you may want to explore bringing the arms up and over. So rather than having them sideways, like the T shape, maybe the fingertips point up overhead, but the elbows should be relaxed. So there shouldn't be any holding, so more of a relaxed stretch. But perhaps with your arms slightly pointing away from the body, that stretch may move a little bit higher up into the side body. So stay with one kind of movement on either side. And then bring your arms back down if they were lifted up overhead, and walk your feet once more back in towards the bottom. So have your feet about hip distance apart, elbows bend and fingertips point up towards the ceiling. So your elbows and your upper arms really connect with your torso. Lifting up into bridge pose. On the inhale, press into your feet, into the upper arms as you lift your hips up towards the ceiling, and exhale, slowly lower. So almost imagine you're peeling the spine off the floor, maybe even starting with the tailbone. So tailbone lifts, lower back, mid back, upper back, and then you may feel the stretch in the shoulders, and slowly roll the spine down, reversing the order. So upper, mid, lower back, tailbone. So do this for a couple of rounds to maybe get a stretch for your upper back, for the neck, and strengthening the lower back. So we're even stretching the front thighs, where the quadriceps attaches. So at any point, if you want to stay up for a little bit higher, you can keep the hips lifted up. So your arms are also acting as that foundation, as that base. If you want, so for those who want to progress, you may want to lift your heels off the floor. So you're balancing on the on the balls of your feet. And at any point, you can bring your heels down, lower the spine down. So it's just another option. So in between, you may want to bring your knees in towards your chest, rock on your back, perhaps even curling together like little balls, so you offset that slight inversion. So perhaps coming back into one more set, so you can lift up, really pressing your elbows into the earth, your upper arms, so that may give you a lift for the chest, for the shoulders. So explore what feels good here today. So you may want to stick with that rolling up and down, or you may even pause a little bit and hug your knees in. Lovely. Take 2 more rounds here. Maybe they're more static hold, or more of the dynamic rolling up and down. Right. And then hug your knees in towards your chest. So again, a bit of a rock from side to side, maybe curl together like a little ball. Good. And from here, roll over to your right side. So you can have your blanket here. The knees remain bent, and you can either rest your head on the blanket, you can rest your head on your arm, you can rest your head in your palm. So as indicated, we're working a bit more with hip mobility, also hip strength. So keeping the feet together, or the inner edges of your feet together, as you lift your left knee up towards the ceiling and then place it down. So you're bringing more strength into that outer hip. So you can rest on your arm, you can rest on your blanket, you can cup your head. So those clamshells, you lift and you lower. Notice, I'm exaggerating, if you're rolling back just to lift the knee. So keep your hips stacked on top of one another. You may want to bring one of your hands behind your lower back, almost to check how much the pelvis actually rolls back. Lovely. Take perhaps one more here. And then maybe want to shake your leg out. So kind of any movement, maybe a bit of a stretch, as if you want to walk or kick that leg out. Good. And keeping the leg almost extended long, so you can lift and lower. So perhaps keep that foot flexed, so there's more of the leg feels a bit more stable, more control. Because if you have your foot quite, let's say, floppy, there may be more of a heaviness in the leg. So the moment you draw your toes towards your face, your whole legs feels more stable. So you can also just pulse here a little bit above the earth. So kind of see what feels available, maybe even some circles. So just bring that mobility into the hip, as well as strengthening the glutes. Perhaps have a little bit of a wiggle again, shake it out. Good. And then from here, roll onto your back. So the same leg you just worked with. So for me, it was the left leg, perhaps for you as well. Cross your left foot over your right ankle, cross your left ankle over your right knee. So staying in that figure 4 stretch. So what we are doing now is we're literally softening and stretching here. You may want to bring that right knee a little closer just to bring that stretch more into the outer hip. So it may feel a bit more intense compared to when you usually do it, because we also just strengthen that area. So you may want to stay here. You may want to just press your, or just gently push that left knee away from you. You may want to lift that right leg closer, perhaps even hold on to the right thigh. And breathe into that sensation, the left outer hip. Good, maybe a bit of a sway, or even when you're on the floor, you can sway your legs, you can shift your knees a bit from side to side. So even just that movement gives you a bit more of a sensation in that outer hip. And use that exhale once more. So release anything that feels tight out through a wide mouth, perhaps. Inhaling through the nose always, if it feels okay, exhaling. Good. So bring that left foot down. Second side, you may want to roll over, you may want to change positions on your mat, but I'll talk you through. So left, we're lying on the left side, knees are bent, the feet, the knees, the hips are stacked on top of each other. You can use the blanket, your arm, your hand. And starting again with the feet remaining together. So you lift that right knee up towards the ceiling. So lifting and then lowering it down. So maybe just a small lift or a small opening, which is absolutely fine. And again, notice if you find yourself making a bigger gap, but for the expense actually rolling back. So here you're really isolating that movement, strengthening those hips, or those outer hips. So at any point, pause, maybe have a bit of a kick or any movement, perhaps even using your fist, perhaps coming back in as the feet remain closed. So those clamshells opening and closing. So avoid holding your breath, because if you're can really feel it now, breathe through it. Lovely, perhaps 2 more. And then perhaps shake that leg out, any movement, perhaps kind of treading water. Lovely. And then extend that leg out, flex your foot so the heel pushes away, and then lift and lower. So you can decide how high you want to lift it. Maybe you just want to pulse it, or have more higher lifts. So you feel probably the weight of your leg. That helps strengthening those muscles we hardly use. You may feel it later today, maybe tomorrow. Good. Take perhaps 2 more here. And almost the slower you go, the heavier and the more difficult it feels. Lovely. Last one here. Oh, and then roll onto your back. So knees bent, take that same leg you just strengthened, cross the right foot, or for me it's the right foot, cross the foot over, staying in that figure 4. So perhaps working towards bringing the left knee a little bit closer in towards your chest. You can even step your left foot closer towards your bottom. So just allowing that side to stretch. So you probably now feel that kind of pairs, that strengthening and stretching, or releasing and lengthening. So use the exhale to let go of those tight sensations. So 2 more breaths. You can wibble, wobble, a bit of that movement from left to right. Good. And then bring your feet down. So we are coming now into a lying down version of tree pose. So extend your legs away from you. Perhaps starting with your left foot. So bring, as you probably visualize, how does tree pose work? So you begin to bring the knee out to the side as you slide the soles of your foot, the sole of your left foot up towards your shin, your thigh. You may want to stay at your knee joint. Perhaps you take even the blanket. If that feels too much of a pull down, perhaps take a blanket and support the left thigh, the left knee. So depending on flexibility, mobility, you may even want to bring the foot up a little bit higher towards your knee joint, towards your thigh. So maybe with your arms, so same here. Visualize you're literally standing in tree pose, but you're actually lying on the earth. Because when you look at yourself from the top, it's the same posture without that weight-bearing element, without that balancing. Perhaps flex that standing foot or that floating foot, the one that is actually on the floor. So for me, it's the right foot as I have my left knee out towards the side. Maybe bring your arms up and over. So as if you're holding your arms in that more cactus shape, perhaps you bring them all the way up as you allow the left hip, the left inner groin here to release. So take a few breaths into your belly button area, into your navel center. So almost working a bit with gravity. Again, the blanket is always there to support you. And then release your arms, release your legs. Extend your left leg again, maybe have a little bit of a wiggle. And second side, so slide the sole of your right foot or the opposite leg, whichever you're using, alongside your calf, your shin, as your right knee points out towards the side. Again, perhaps prop it up with a blanket, with a pillow, if there's too much of a pull on the inner groin. So find your tree pose here and perhaps set yourself up with that standing foot. Maybe flex those toes, point them up towards your head. Maybe bring your arms out wide to the side so the shoulders release, the shoulders relax. A few deep breaths into your belly. So visualize yourself as that strong, majestic tree. So without that weight bearing, without that balancing. So more focus on that mobility of that range of motion in that hip. 2 more breaths. Good. And then slowly come out of that tree on the second side. Maybe have a little bit of a wiggle, perhaps bend both knees. Let them windscreen vibe once more from side to side. So again, that hip mobility, that internal and external rotation of your hip. Lovely. So from here, roll over onto one side, and we're meeting in the all fours position. So again, perhaps a little bit more emphasis on that hip mobility. You can keep your blanket close by because you may need it for a little bit more weight-bearing elements on our knees. So for the time being, bring mobility into your spine. Knees can be about hip distance apart. And come into those cat and cows. So on the exhale, you round your back, you push the floor away from you as you squeeze almost the belly in. Maybe coming into that really eccentric expression of that cat posture, and then releasing the belly down, maybe stretch, tailbone lifts, chest lifts. So exhale, rounding,
really pushing out. So your hands, you can even walk your hands a little closer towards your knees. So that may give you a bit more better push up towards the ceiling, and then releasing as you extend the spine. So a couple of rounds here, those cat and cows, chin really towards your chest. So there's that release through the back of your neck. And inhale, lengthening. Good. So a couple of rounds here to mobilize. Lovely. One more breath. And then point both hands. So turn your palms slightly out. So we're using the long edge, the right edge of your mat. So instead of the fingertips pointing forward, let your fingertips point away from you. So your right hand is a little bit closer, still hands parallel. Same movement here, cat and cow. So rounding the spine on the exhale, and then releasing, chest looking forward. So slight variation for that stretch. So we bring it more into the left side, and then release, and you inhale. So perhaps one more or two more movements here as you really push the left side of your back up towards the ceiling. Good. Then change sides, or maybe in between have a little bit of a wiggle for your fists, stretching them out, perhaps circling, that feels better. And then change sides. So left hand, right hand, parallel. Find you can even walk them slightly closer, rounding the spine. Again, the chin moves towards the chest, so you don't have any tension in your neck as you move through those cat and cow movements here on the second side. So perhaps there's more of a sensation you're running through the right side. Maybe it feels a little tighter. Maybe it feels a little easier compared to the first side. So two more movements here. And then walking back to center again. You can circle through your wrists, have a bit of a wiggle. So optional here for those who want to move up into downward dog. So you can move up into downward dog. If you want to stay on the floor, keep your knees and your hips on top of each other. Walk your hands a little bit further away from you, forward, and then you push the bottom back. So that gives you the same stretch without the weight bearing element. So your bottom almost floats up in the air. So as your knees and your hips form one line. If you want to move up into downward dog, have maybe a little bit of a pedal, swaying your feet, extending through your calves. Sometimes it's a nice stretch just to be a little bit upside down, but please do choose. So I give you a little bit of time to explore. You can move between both, perhaps resting in a child's pose that's accessible, even if it looks a bit more like tabletop. Release, so it's more what it feels like rather than what it looks like. So explore here. Let your neck soften. The head is lower than the heart, which brings more calming qualities into the body. Lovely. So stay perhaps for two more breaths to center yourself. Good. And then come back onto your onto all fours again. So perhaps you may need a blanket, as it may be a bit more perhaps strenuous on one side of the knee. So turn actually around so you face the long edge of your mat. So we are bringing the right knee perhaps onto the blanket or even a pillow. And then you bring the left foot forward. So you're up in a kneeling position. So, and perhaps think about that your knee or your body points forward and you step the left foot out, perhaps even turning the foot out slightly. So you can
even walk your foot a little bit away from you. So we are going into a little bit of a stretch here. So there may be sensation on the groin, and you can direct that stretch. So the further forward your foot, the closer your foot is to your knee, the more you actually feel that stretch in your calf. So perhaps bring your foot a little bit away, and the moment then you shift your weight to that side, there may be more of a sensation through that inner thigh. So it helps to stretch one side. You can explore also bring the foot almost more to the center of your mat. So you make it more of a side stretch. So explore your different ways of kind of getting into the hip. So you can use your forearm perhaps to rest on your thigh, maybe even bringing one arm up, making it more of a side stretch. So explore here different perhaps ways. So it's also a little bit of balance. So you lengthen, maybe you release. So it may feel different. Perhaps you just keep your hand down. So perhaps you want to stay on one side for a little bit longer, breathing through it. So it feels different for all of us. So these are muscles we probably hardly access at any point. If something feels maybe a little bit compressing in your hip, perhaps change direction. So it gives you a stretch regardless. You can always lengthen, really keep that length as you lean over, maybe even trying the opposite side. So just a bit of a stretch in both directions. That you lean back. Good. One more, perhaps movement here, and then slowly transition to the floor. Perhaps bring your foot back so you're literally back in tabletop. Probably it's recommended to have a couple of tabletop circles, so that helps the hip to almost come back into its kind of proper position, so it feels less stretched or less worked. So a little bit of a sway, and then you can change sides. So you may want to again turn around to face the long edge of your mat. So set yourself up to come into that kneeling position. So take a bit longer for the actual setup. So your foot turns away from you, and then allow yourself kind of just that gentle sway. So we are getting into those adductor muscles here. So kind of just slowly, gradually releasing what feels tight. You may explore the foot. You can step it further away, can bring it a little bit more in. You can use that exhale. So that sometimes even helps on a psychological level to breathe out those tight sensations from your hip. So at any point you may want to bring your arm in, up and over, so make it more of a stretch. You can stick to one side. You might want to perhaps also lean to the opposite side. So it's even here, it requires a bit of balance. So use the core to keep you balanced. So those muscles we're actually just lengthening, stretching, so you can continue. They are literally the ones, if you sit in a cross-legged position, when the knees are a little bit higher up, so the more we release them, the more the knees actually come down towards the floor. Lovely. So perhaps take two more here on that side. And then once more transition onto the floor. So step that right foot back to tabletop. Again, a bit of a sway through your hips. So circling, even tabletop circles. If you want, again, optional, you can lift up once more into downward dog. So make it yours. You can come into that quarter of a downward dog by keeping your hips over your knees and your hands a little further forward. So as you lift those elbows perhaps and pressing those fingertips into the earth, that gives you more of a sensation in your upper back, in that shoulder. Good. Couple of more breaths here, and at any point we meet back in child's pose. So whatever child's pose looks and feels for you. So more important, should feel restful. So breathing in through your nose, perhaps exhaling out through a wide mouth. A couple of breaths here. Lovely. And then coming perhaps once more up into kneeling position. So just perhaps a tiny back bend here. So bring perhaps both knees onto the blanket as you come up into that kneeling position. So depending how the tops of your feet feel, they may be extended or they may be flat. You may want to curl the toes under. So it's depends how it feels. So we are bringing the hands onto the lower back and draw those elbows towards one another. So you may feel that lift through the chest. So take your gaze just slightly up towards the ceiling. Good. And then softening, release. So hands rest on your lower back, or even like those jeans pockets are, drawing those elbows once more back. Chest lift slightly. Breathing into the front body. And coming back down. So what you can do a couple of more of these, or to add a bit of a progression, you may want to come into the same posture. Sway the body slightly back. So you lean slightly back. So your thighs, they kick in, and then swaying perhaps slightly forward, come back out. So it's also proprioception, training the sense or the skill of proprioception. Where are you in space? So even here you train also your core, because the core naturally kicks in as you don't want to topple back. So whichever posture you're choosing, continue to breathe. So there's that balance again between effort and ease. Lovely. One more breath here. And then coming down, perhaps even rolling together, maybe just bring the palms down, keeping the bottom up. So it's like a counter pose. Breathing in and out through your nose. Good. And then coming back out, the posture, you can release your blanket, but keep it close by, please. So we are coming into seated position. From here we transition onto the floor into the twist we actually did last week as well. So it's the slightly deeper twist. So we start again on our side, let's say the right side. You pop that blanket, I think last time we had a block perhaps, in between your thighs and between your knees, and you roll your left shoulder back. So there's the chance that your left arm, your left shoulder floats. So you can keep
perhaps even your left hand resting on your left rib cage or waist. So if it feels too much of a pull in the shoulder, then keep your hand, bring that left hand down so the left shoulder still hovers, but the left elbow perhaps supports you more. So slightly deeper version of the twist, but that helps to just bring the body back to balance. So sometimes we have to get a little bit more pretzely to initiate a bit of a deeper relaxation. So your gaze can go up towards the ceiling, or you point the head towards the left side. So, and let the breath flow into the left side of your body. Avoid holding or clenching the blanket too much. Allow the body just to naturally kind of meld into that position. It's important here that your right leg, if you use the right side, is on the floor. You need the blanket between your knees, so it keeps the hips properly stacked. And you allow the breath to flow into the left side. So focus on those breaths, once more being directed more into the lower abdomen, the lower part of your body. One more breath into that left side. And then return your left arm to meet your right arm. So you're on your side again. From here, roll onto your back as you release the blanket. Perhaps just have a bit of a wiggle as you come back to neutral. And then second side. So you lie on your left side, knees bent and leave the blanket between your knees. And you allow the right arm to move over. So you're moving into the twist. So you may want to bring perhaps your knees up a little bit higher. So maybe they're almost, your legs almost straight. Perhaps bend your knees a little bit more. And take the moment just to settle into that twist on the second side. So take time to follow the exhale really out your body. So maybe feel how the belly button kind of drops back, how maybe the stomach almost squeezes slightly together. And with your inhale, you're almost unwrinkling those creases as you bring more expansion into the torso. So a couple of breaths. Then keep your neck, your head where it feels okay. Note that those twists are very nourishing. So 2 more breaths on that second side.
And then bring your right arm up and over, so you're left on your back on your left side, and then roll all the way onto your back. So any movement, you may want to bring your knees together, perhaps curl up, perhaps stay exactly as you are. Maybe bring the blanket also underneath your neck. So make a nice cushion, nice nest. If your knees are bent, take the feet wide and let your knees drop in. So eyes can be closed, or you keep a soft gaze. So connect to all the points of your back body that are resting on the floor. Okay, perhaps the soles of your feet connecting, or maybe your ankles and the outside edges of your feet if your legs are extended. So literally bring your mind's eye into those areas and softening, releasing anything that still feels maybe a bit more tense. Let your mind wander to your shins, to your calves. So consciously relaxing those areas. Your knees, backs of your knees. Your thighs, backs of your thighs. Pelvis. Lower back and lower abdomen. Mid back. Rib cage. Upper back. Chest. Lungs and heart center. Your upper arms. Elbows. Forearms. Wrists. Palms. Fingertips. Sense perhaps that energy running through your fingertips. Then let your mind travel back up towards your shoulders, your neck, softening your upper and your lower jaw, and clench your teeth. Feel the back of your head resting against the earth. Softening your cheeks, your eyes, eyebrows, your forehead. Soften your forehead. And the top of your head. Let your mind rest at the tips of your nostrils. As you feel the air coming in and flowing out. Perhaps draw the breath up towards the top of your head, into your skull. And as you exhale, let your breath travel down towards the tops of your toes. Draw the breath from the tops of your toes up towards the crown of your head. And then let it glide down again towards the tops of your toes. Breathing up towards the top of your head. And breathing down towards the tops of your toes. Perhaps visualize that mind's journey of your breath. As you travel up and down your body. Long, slow, full, complete breaths. Feel that expansion with each inhale. And that softening, even contracting of the belly button on the exhale. Let those exhales be complete. So you're able to draw deeper, fuller breaths back into your body. Slowly and gradually prepare the body to bring deeper breaths back into your whole body. Maybe even exhale out through a wide mouth as you bring movement back into your fingers, your toes, your hands, your feet. Maybe even rolling your head from side to side. Slowly awakening the neck. But perhaps stretching the arms up and over. So I want to stretch from top to toe. And then hug your knees back into your chest. Curl together like a little ball. And then allow yourself to rock over to one side, roll over to one side. Staying there for a breath or two. And then find your way back into any seated position. Good. So take a moment just to land, to arrive. Oh, and maybe bring your arms once more up, lengthening, stretching, reaching up. And then bring the breath back into your heart center. Bow your head towards your heart. Thank yourself for making time this morning. Namaste.